All right, good evening. It is Wednesday, April 30th, and this is a joint meeting of the Bangor School Committee and the Bangor City Council. Why don't we go around the table and just give everyone a chance to state their name and their position? And then we'll get started. Tim, can we start with you?
Sure. Tim Surratt, I'm Vice Chair, Bangor School Committee. Good to be here.
Councillor Joseph Leonard.
Councilor Michael Beck.
Councilor Wayne Mallon.
Councilor Sue Hobbs.
Councilor Carolyn Fish.
Councilor Susan Dean. Katie Biden School Committee.
School Committee Member Marwa Hassanen.
Council Chair Kara Pelletier.
And Kajandra, School Committee. Marie Robinson, Superintendent.
Jerry Hayman, Business Director.
Rick Fournier, Councilor.
Debbie Laurie, City Manager.
Excellent. We have one big item on the agenda, and that is to review the draft of the fiscal year 2026 school department budget. We are ready.
Okay, perfect. So thank you all for being here and listening to the presentation. I feel like the school department has worked really hard to put together a sound educational budget that really does continue to be mindful of our taxpayers. It's always challenging, but we're going to go through, is that the beginning or is there the agenda?
There is an agenda.
So what we're going to be looking at this evening is just first reviewing the mission and vision of the Bangor School Department. And then taking a look at what the budget goals are. I've included enrollment review, demographics, and then looking at our revenue and expenditures. And then of course, if there are any questions. And feel free to interrupt me in the middle of this if you have a question, that's perfectly fine. I'm also, there's many details. So I'm gonna give you the overview with the key points. So if you want further details, we're happy to answer any of those questions. So here we have our mission and vision. I'm not one that reads the slides to folks, so. Feel free to just just as a reminder of what it is we're trying to do and why this is such an important piece to our city budget to make sure that our school children are getting high quality educational experience here in Bangor. And our budget goals, as I mentioned, really taking a look at our strategic plan and how do we align to that strategic plan to ensure that we continue with a high quality educational program for the children of the community. And then again, optimizing that learning, but also maintaining fiscal responsibility. I feel very strongly ethically with that piece that there are wants and there are needs in the school department. And I think we have to work diligently to ensure that we are maximizing our resources so that the impact to the taxpayer is reasonable and doable. So we were able to have an enrollment study conducted at the bottom of this slide here. You see the New England School Development Council. So that organization, after we provided them with some historical data, they completed that enrollment study for us. So this goes through the historical enrollment, and you can see where in the past 10 years, we've seen a decline, just like public schools across the country are continuing to see that decline. And then it also goes on to project 10 years out. So you see that in the next 10 years, it declines even further. So again, with that being a piece of the puzzle in terms of budget, we really are looking at making sure that we are meeting the needs of our students, but also being mindful that enrollment is decreasing. There's a detailed, if anyone is interested, it's a quite detailed report, and there's a link there, the enrollment projection report, that gives you a little bit more specifics, and they looked at birth rates and things of that sort. So if you're interested, that link is there. And then here is another key component that we have to recognize when we look at school budgets. So the, parent enrollment versus, students with special needs. We know that we are seeing an increase in students with special needs, and that, along with that, of course, comes some increase in costs. Looking back historically, since 2016, there's been an increase in the Bangor School Department of 200 students identified with special needs. So that certainly plays a role in what we are obligated to do to ensure that they can access the educational programming just like everyone else. And here we have some demographic data. This is the breakdown of the student ethnicity, along with the socioeconomic percentages. I think it's really interesting to note that the public schools across the nation, I believe it was around 12 years ago when the national average was tipped over 50% of children in public schools were living in poverty. So we see that socioeconomic percentage right there. Free and reduced is at 51% here in Bangor right now. Next, we have just an overview. This is not super detailed, but gives you a great picture of the general fund revenue and where that all comes from. So again, I'm not going to read that slide, but if you look at the local appropriation right here, straight across the 772,000, that's the additional local that we are looking at for this budget. We were fortunate to have an increase in subsidy this year from the state, so that close to 2 million really was very helpful in offsetting the cost to the local taxpayers. These are the state budget categories and how they have shifted since last year, past couple of years, and looking at this year. So the state requires the school department to break all of our budget expenses into these categories. So regular instruction, special and special education, other instruction, student and staff support, system and school administration, transportation, facilities maintenance, debt services, and then all of the other expenditures. Those are the required categories that all of our expenses fit into. And we do have, if there's any questions about what falls into those, we're happy to answer those. And then I've added this slide so that it's really clear to see the major factors that have contributed to the budget increases. At the top of the pyramid, there is the contractual obligations, a little under 800,000. Then the second section of the pyramid is the benefits district-wide, just a little over 800,000, and then expenses to support student programming, a little over close to 1.2 million. And I do also have a handout, which, knowing my presentation, I'm going to wait till after I'm done presenting because everyone will read the handout. But I have a little bit more details in and you've seen this. It's just a reiteration of what you've already seen is the memo that we put together and the summary of what's included in those pyramid sections. And then this is a breakdown of the cost centers just in a different view so that you can get a visual of what that looks like. Regular instruction comprises a little about 42.5% of our budget. Special ed is a little bit under 20% right now, and the other categories fall under that. And then the next two graphs, this one and the next one, are the historical view of the state versus local funding that we have seen. Pretty self-explanatory. And then the state subsidy percentages and how that has fluctuated over the past years. And again, this year we were very fortunate to have an increase in our state subsidy. And then I've also included a link to our 5-year capital improvement plan. We all know that the facilities that our students are learning in make a huge difference to the success that they can achieve. So I was very pleased when I arrived in Bangor to see that this is a real priority. The 5-year capital improvement plan is something that Director Heyman has been working diligently on with the building administrators to make sure that our facilities are up to date and offer the best learning environment that we can for our students and work conditions for our staff. So that link goes right to that. And that's pretty much everything. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Counselor Leonard?
On the special education, piece, is there, does that combine,
Thank you.
not only, what we consider a stereotypical special ed, but also, special ed where it's, struggling students that like read at a lower grade level, or is that separate in
separate.
general? Okay.
That's separate. So in special education, what you'll have are students that have an identified an IEP, an individualized education plan.
Okay, Roger.
And also the 504, which is a medical accommodation.
Counselors, other questions?
I'm just wondering, yeah.
Counselor
Yeah.
Haas?
Transportation costs, that's for your busing
Yes,
as well as what else? Or is that just busing?
Just busing.
Okay.
We have a 5-year contract. We're in the middle of it for the John T. Sear.
Mhm.
And it's been, part of the contract was, every year was going up 4%.
So it went up again 4%.
Yeah, so that's what you're seeing.
And if we can add, I think just from a historical perspective, is your bus still utilizing fuel from the city?
Part of the contract is, fuel.
Correct.
That we supply. We have it. It's from Dice Service, and they have a place on Ohio Street, and they fill up. We get like 9,500 gallons of diesel at a time and 500 gallons of gasoline at a time.
And that's a change that we made within the last decade, and I believe you were here when we made that change, right? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, because what it really did is it took out, so if you think about bidding for long-term contracts like that, bidders will potentially build in an escalator for unknown market conditions. So we were able to work together to take some of the unpredictability out of that.
Counselor Leonard?
I just out of curiosity, again, with the special education, where does, and my apology if you don't know the answer to this question, but where does Maine, rank in per capita for the amount of, special ed students that we have compared to, other states? Are we on the higher end, or are we sort of, like going along with the rest of the states in the country?
that's a great question. To my understanding, the average right now is about 25 to 30% students being identified with special needs, and that's nationwide.
Okay.
Yeah, and there might be pockets here and there that it varies, but that is a trend.
Counselor Fournier?
Thank you for the enrollment numbers.
you're welcome. I expect you to click on the site.
I already have.
Have you?
Yeah. I appreciate that. That interest income of 79,000.
Yeah.
That just popped up there.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know what that means.
It's a development of a sweep account with the help of the city,
Oh, okay, great.
and
Good.
it generates some interest, which
Good.
we're very happy for.
Yeah,
And it is new, started last year, was his first year.
great.
So this is the first year we attempted to budget a whole year, and we believe that 79,000 is very conservative in the budget. We may do better than that. Yeah.
Good. So you must be sitting on a fund balance of,
Our fund balance is every year we use 1.25 million to help with the budget. And it was on one of the slides that was presented. After you take that in consideration, we have a fund balance of about 6%. So,
6%.
Yeah. about 6% of budget.
Okay.
And they allowed during the COVID years for all school districts to increase it. And very quickly, either next year or the year after at the latest, it will go down to 5%. It used to be 3% of budget, which was very small. And so we're very close to our 5% maximum.
Great. So when I look at this, the overall budget, and it's just that enrollment is going down, and it's projected to still go down. Meanwhile, expenses are increasing. And I get the whole special needs aspect of it. But we're also seeing increasing state funding. That I would hope would kind of offset. So when I looked at this budget, I dropped it. And I can't do it line by line item veto. And I respect that. But again, the taxpayers of Bangor are getting walloped. Through many different things. We've had the proposed city budget, things are going up. There are a lot of people on fixed income around town. And everything that's happening in the world these days. Prices are increasing. If they haven't already, they're going to be. I'm just really concerned. And I'd like to see, instead of what was it, a 7?
772.
Yeah. But an increase of the budget from last year of what? It was increasing to,
It was like about 2 point something altogether. And the local share was 772,000, which I believe was around 2.8% or something like that, I believe. Off the top.
So the overall increase is 4.73,
473.
and the local share is 2.61%.
I would just like to see that trimmed down a little bit more. If at all possible.
Counselor Fish?
I was gonna ask a similar question with the funding increasing, and a number of students decreasing. And for instance, I wondered if some of these increases were anything that got defunded or funds that were decreased from the previous year that kind of wrapped in as a result of these increases. And do you see any other funding that's existing now to help support this budget that may go away this year and be even more effective in a negative way next year?
So one thing to speak to, being mindful of the enrollment decline is, and it's kind of, it varies from school to school. I don't have the specifics, but right now, what we were able to do within this budget, there are 2 teachers at the high school who are retiring. And those positions are going unfilled. So that's one area. And then there are 2 additional positions that are included in different schools. And those are going to be filled through internal transfers. So that was 4 positions that typically would have been added on, but because we really dug in and said, okay, can we be creative with our schedules? Can we look at things differently? Can we, make this work without having to refill the position, knowing that, again, we do have a decline in enrollment. The tricky piece is, the enrollment is showing decline, but we also want to be mindful of the opportunities. So, even though there might be an overall decline, it takes a while before you really see the major budgetary impacts, because you don't want to cut, I don't think, AP world language or things of that sort, or physics, or, something that's just because the enrollment's down, there's still the need across the board for those courses. And in terms of any funding that we are foreseeing, at this point, we do not foresee any issues with our funding moving forward. That's the message right now. So again, we continue to monitor it. But right now, we do not anticipate any issue there.
I have one more. If I could.
Yes.
In some of the private schools, they seem to be increasing in enrollment, and sometimes there's waiting, they don't even have enough, teachers or the capacity, and our public schools are decreasing. What do you think that shift is? Do you have any ideas of how we could, change that, or
Well,
what do you think the reason is for that?
There's a lot of reasons. But one thing that I would say is, what we are planning on doing moving forward is we have our 10-year strategic plan that is, 5 years, we're 5 years into that. So the discussions that I've had so far with the district team are that, it's really time to take a close look at that and say, how are we meeting the needs of students and families? Does this need to be revised or refined? So we are going to embark on that strategic planning process, coming up here. I have a meeting, next week to determine some further next steps on the timing of that. But that will include community, listening sessions. It will include, talking to faculty, families, students, so that we can really get a clear picture of, what is it here? What can bring everyone back, or at least some. So we are working on a campaign of belonging too, and really trying to help make that human connection. I meet monthly with the student advisory group that is comprised of high school students, and that's one thing that's come through, is just that connection that they have to the staff there and how important that is. Mhm.
Counselor Leonard?
So I don't know exactly what the total numbers are for the slide where it shows the declining rate of students here, but it, I'll be just general with it. It looks like about 3,800 in 2014 to 2015, and it looks like it dips to about 3,400, let's say. So we're looking at what looks like a 400 student drop over the course of a decade. Generally speaking, like how does that impact the budget overall? Like what is the loss of 400 students really could comprise of? Because I'm just trying to wrap my head around, like, is this decrease really all that nefarious to look at? Because a 400 student drop to me, I don't really see that as a major issue, only because when we look at our own city right now, we've had a stagnant population right now. And so I'm just trying to put two populations together. Like, is that in the plan for the school to follow through with? Like, is this to be expected just because of the way that our city is aging? And do we need to reach out to more constituents that have growing families more? Or is this just that we're waiting for the next batch of parents sort of scenario?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's a lot that can happen with a 400 student decline, but it's not necessarily an obvious, like, oh, well, that would mean X, Y, and Z. Because again, when you're talking about 12 grade or 13 grade levels, if you count pre-K, those could be a smattering of kids all across. So what I can assure you is that we are looking very closely. So part of the budget process is a staffing analysis that all of the building administrators submit to me first. And then Director Heyman and I review that to say, like, okay, if we're seeing a decline in this enrollment and someone is requesting, and I've denied a number of things, well, we need another teacher. And I'm like, do you? Like, let's look at this maybe a little bit differently. Not to say that we want to load up the class size, because I don't think that's effective, but I do look very closely at all of that to make sure, that we're doing what needs to be done to pay attention to the decline in enrollment, but again, not cut things that are gonna negatively impact the programming.
Okay, so in all honesty, this budget, it just doesn't scare me. It really doesn't. I'm sorry, Counselor Fournier, but I have to disagree with you. Especially in a time where we have no idea what's gonna happen at the federal level. I would much rather have a school budget that is stable this year. And if we need to revisit a budget next year, I'm open to that, but I have massive concerns at the federal level of what's going to happen across the nation, impacting education, and I just do not think this is the year to mess with this budget. I really don't.
So my concern is around the decline in enrollment, but the increase in staff. So I asked Chair Luciano to just go back and send me FTE counts from the last few years. And since 2021, although we've seen a steady decline in enrollment and it's projected out for another 10 years, 31 positions have been added to the staff, 31 FTE. And we're asking for another 4 this year. And I assumed it was related to special education because I know there are, mandates around student to teacher ratios, but when I look at the positions that are being requested, it's an athletic director, it's a student counselor. I'm not saying that those aren't important positions, but it concerns me that enrollment is down. I don't know what the percentage is, because we don't have the actual numbers, we just see the graph. But FTEs at the staff salaries that we're paying for, the number of positions are up 5%, and that doesn't make sense to me. So when we're talking about fiscal responsibility and making sure that, we're keeping the decline in enrollment in mind, again, this year, more staff is being requested, and that math to me doesn't make sense.
Well, I can definitely understand where you're coming from. In terms of the athletic director, that position is designed to support students. Because currently we have at the middle level, assistant principals are coordinating all of the athletics. And that is consuming approximately 50% of their time. And we are seeing this does relate to students' needs directly, because what we're seeing is that the assistant principals normally would have more time, and in every other school across the state, assistant principals do not do athletics because they're instructional leaders, they're there for students. So this shift is designed to allow for more student support without adding another social worker, another counselor at the middle level. So again, we have to be mindful of the big picture. And then if I'm speaking about the elementary, the school counselor, those again, we are seeing an increase in the student needs mental health wise, needing that conflict resolution support, dealing with, peers, the coping skills, the emotional regulation. Those supports are what's offered by school counselors. So adding that is going to support 3 schools. So it's not really adding a whole nother person. It's helping 3 elementary schools have a full-time coverage in their buildings. And then in terms of the grade 1 teacher, that's an increase in that particular area of enrollment. So again, I know the decline, it does have an impact, but if it's not directly, we don't lose 30 first graders all the time that we could eliminate a position. It's spread out. So it's something that we pay attention to, but it doesn't always equate to a direct reduction. And then in terms of maintenance, again, looking at the buildings, we know we have aging buildings. Part of that strategic planning process is going to be looking at our facilities. So we want to, we have the needs assessment application that went out, and we're waiting in on July. We'll hear back as to whether the schools that were identified and reviewed by the DOE will be on the list for, construction, which were Down East, Mary Snow, and Fairmount. So we'll have more information in the summer so that we can determine, what some next steps are gonna be. But right now, we need that support to keep our facilities in good shape.
My follow-on,
So go ahead.
follow on to that, which is you said that 4 positions are being filled internally or not. So are you canceling those positions and taking that money out of the budget? Or are you leaving those as unfilled open positions that are
No,
accounted for
they're
in
out.
this budget?
They're out.
How many open positions unfilled do you have? I would also like to know how long have they been open? Because if you have like unfilled positions that have been open year after year after year that have been part of the budget,
We removed those as well.
you do.
Yeah, I did take those out this year. How many?
So you took out a substantial number.
We took eight out. Yeah, because of that exact reason. They've gone unfilled and then we've been able to creatively solve the problem. And, you know, after having multiple conversations, like, okay, are we doing everything we need to? And the answer is yes, so we took them out.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little more context on this, the increase in FTEs over the last 4 or 5 years. I think an elephant in the room was the COVID-19 crisis, and we really invested pretty aggressively in student support services as a result of the impacts of COVID-19. School social workers, school counselors, school nurses, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that's not, you said 31, I know that's not all the 31 positions, but I know that is several of them.
And yeah, if I may, I was gonna say exactly the same thing. In addition to that, we had an influx of ML students, right? We all know that. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 2 to 3 new teachers were added, ML teachers that were specifically targeted to take care of that issue. And the students are still here. They haven't gone anywhere. In addition to the mental health crisis that we've seen post-COVID, right? So as school counselors, I believe a social worker too. So all of this, I mean, I agree with Dr. Robinson. We have to look at the totality of the picture versus just, you know, kind of looking at position by position. The totality of the picture is exactly the needs that we're seeing, an increase in mental health issues and challenges, and then also the ML students.
And then just in terms of thinking about positions like an athletic director, and to Dr. Robinson's point, this is going to alleviate some pressure on the people that have been overburdened with organizing sports and not focusing on student success. That also goes to Councilmember Fish and others' concerns about student enrollment and why they go to other places. They want to see things like, did they have an athletic director? Do they have a robust program for my kiddo to participate in sports or whatnot? So in terms of marketability, when we think about how you market the Bangor School Department to the sending schools, right, and try to woo them back from the private schools, parents are looking for things like this as well. So it suits the needs of the staff. It helps the students because those staff can refocus on the academics, and it's attractive for the parents who are looking for a robust, for example, athletic program to send their kids to. So it covers lots of buckets in that way.
And I would just also echo that it connects as well to the retention of staff. We know that staff in schools, just like in many other industries, there's a high rate of burnout. So looking at how do we support our staff and make sure that the Bangor School Department is a place that people want to work and want to, so that we can eliminate, you know, these positions that have gone unfilled for years. I really, you know, aim to make the Bangor School Department a place people want to be, and that they choose to come there because of how they feel, how they're treated, and the services that they receive. And this is, you know, just the beginning of it. But I think this year, let's just say it would have been much higher had Director Heyman and I not done what we had done at this point. So we are mindful of that.
I want to take a moment to acknowledge that Chair Luciano has joined us. Hello, just for the record. Councilor Mallard?
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what the average cost per student is, expenditure per student, plus what the state average is, plus what our tuition rate is in both high school and elementary.
You have that, or?
I don't have it here. Every year we have to do a maintenance of equity study. The state wants to make sure that you're not slipping in those areas, that you're actually spending more on the children, and if you're spending more on this school, all the schools are receiving equal treatment. So we do that every year, and we've gotten good reviews, notifications out of the state that no further adjustments were needed. So that's been good news, and I believe every year the state of Maine produces elementary and secondary tuition rates for all the schools, and I believe Bangor's secondary rates about 14,800 per student.
And what's that cost?
The cost is in the maintenance spec sheet, which I do not have with me here.
We can get that to you then.
Yeah, I need to see that in. I was under the impression that, and things change all the time, but 100 years ago, when I used to be on a budget committee. And when you're 80, you can say 100 years ago, because it seems like it's been that long. Tuition rate was based on, not based on your cost. It was based on the state average cost. Is that still true? How does the state determine tuition? You must have some input into it.
I do not know how they do that. There is a maximum, and I believe we're at the maximum amount per student,
So.
because
I just-
they do it down to the dollar and the penny,
Yeah, I know they do.
so.
I appreciate seeing those.
Counselor Leonard?
I know where you're coming from, Wayne, and I mean, it makes sense. I do understand. This is just how I look at investment in education, though. Full disclosure, I've been an undercover substitute teacher in the Brewer school system, and the $115 a day. The $115 a day that a substitute makes is, I'm sure, like easy to do when you're just having to babysit kids effectively, but that is what education is at the end of the day. It is highly skilled supervised childcare, and it's really important to understand that you get what you put into education. And what we see in other countries that really invest into their education, they get higher quality of life of their students when they transition to becoming adults. They become more robust in their communities. They're much more likely to also invest in their communities more because of their learned skills, and just even having it. School can be a place where it's the most stable area for a child's life, because there are some kids that I've substitute taught for who don't have stable households, who have some really horrifying stories, and sometimes just getting a free meal at school is like the best thing that happens to them at the end of the day. And that in itself, you can't put a dollar price on. You can't put a price on that. And the way I look at education is, if the federal government is not going to help us out, we need to completely rethink and overhaul our education system here. And we need to be serious about this. What do we want to invest into our kids? Do we want to invest in kids that are going to have the best possible chances to have a happier life than we do right now? Or do we want to cut costs and hope for the best? We get more bang for our buck by investing in children. I mean, and that's not trying to like get me to come at heartstrings. It's economically been proven. If you invest in education, you literally help your local economy more. What we have to do as a council is to convince students to stay here, convince people to stay here. That's what our job is. This declining this declining enrollment rate is not a concern to me, because I just see potential, as what Dr. Robinson said earlier. So I want to be mindful of the taxpayer, to Rick's point. I don't think we should be overzealous in reality. But I really do not think now is the time to be throwing cargo off the ship. I really, really don't. That would be, I think, I think that would be that would be a mistake on our part.
Counselor Fish?
I think, excuse me, it was cold this morning when I left. I think that there is a divide in education. I think in the last few years, and I'm not in education, so that's why I have so many questions. But I have grandchildren and I've had kids through the system. And right now, my grandchildren's age, so my son's children that are going through the high school and elementary. And as they're getting ready to go to high school, which we had kind of a big shift from the last couple of years headed toward high school, many of them in their years were going to private school. And when I asked why, they said they really wanted a focus on academics. That was the key thing. They just, all the peripheral stuff, we certainly need to think about what the other people need. That's why we have public versus private and all the diversity. But there was a huge shift in that, in several of the communities and some in Bangor, that they chose private because they wanted academics. They wanted to ensure that their children's future was going to be better for them in the future with just focusing on academics. The other concern I have is, we have an elderly population here in Bangor, and right now we have more delinquencies in the mortgages than we've seen since about 2008, 2009. Because with all the impact of all the expenses, we have not just the elderly, but we have young families that are just struggling to pay their taxes, pay their insurance, buy food. So we do want the children to get the best education and be able to come up with this best budget possible. But we have to be mindful of all the people struggling as well. So we have to kind of preserve the people that are here and are elderly, but also invest in our future. So it's a tough place to be. And right now, delinquencies, I don't know, Councilor Fournier, you've seen it at his bank, but I know the reports we're getting, mortgage delinquencies are as high as they were in 2008 during the great crash. So that's concerning.
Counselor Fournier?
No one's delinquent. I just want to compliment you on using creativity and those 8 positions. But what I'm going to say is I want you to be a little bit more creative and just bring it down a little bit and do the best that you can. That's what I'm asking.
So this is always an interesting debate, right? What do we take away from student educational success for the sake of the budget? That's the question we asked ourselves when we looked at this budget. And when we thought about eliminating positions and when we thought about the positions that we're adding. When we talk about trimming it more, right? And I know this is smaller than what we started with, right? Because we got some insurance projections and other things that were significantly higher. And thanks to our team at the administrative level, they really worked on it. So when we looked at this, and I'm gonna say we, but I'm speaking for myself. When I look at the budget, I think, is there anything more that we can take away that is going to do harm to our students' ability to be academically successful, right? Tonight, we're gonna honor our math team. We've honored robotics teams that are excelling. We have seen kids getting awards for academic showcase nights and things that are happening. So when we think about cutting the budget further than this, when this is not a frivolous budget, we're not adding like random stuff to it. What are we willing to sacrifice in our students' educational journey that could take away from that success? If this was a budget that was super inflated, it'd be a different thing, right? But it's not adding fluffy positions, it's accommodating for students or for teacher salaries and benefits and kind of standard increases. But that's kind of that's the question we have to ask ourselves. And me personally, I'm not sure where you take away this year, because it is a pretty menial increase overall when you're thinking about where the costs are coming from.
Last year, there was talk of a pre-K and then a 3-year-old pre-K, I believe, that has not yet come to fruition, I'm assuming. So that would be one of the cuts that you have not added this year. Is that correct?
What do you mean a cut that we haven't added? I'm not sure.
Well, this hasn't been budgeted for me. It's still in the talking stages.
Do you
So
mean-
pre-K is still just the one year prior to kindergarten.
Oh, correct, yes.
I don't know what you called it. It was,
This, was it the
Yeah, I
CDS
think
program
that's-
that we talked about
Mhm.
last?
is
So
that
this
something
child
that's
development-
looming in the future?
Oh, it's Lumen.
Yeah.
Health Development Services, is
Yeah.
going to be, consumed by the public school system. So that is happening, 2020, what's next year? Not next year, but the following year is when we'll be,
And that would
there would
provide additional funding for that.
That's our understanding. Everything is still being worked on right now, but they are gonna transition those responsibilities to the public schools. So I've been connecting with Karen Sichters at Penquist to talk about how we can partner to prepare for that. With this new, I was just at the Bright Beginnings ribbon, cutting or the groundbreaking ceremony rather, which was wonderful. I mean, that's gonna be an amazing opportunity again for this area when you talk about bringing families in, and now you've added a 16 classroom brand new childcare facility that's gonna account for or accommodate 40 children. That's huge. So I think Bangor is moving in the right direction to be ahead of the game, be innovative, and hopefully bring families to the area. The other thing I think is important to recognize, and I don't have a specific timeline on this, but in my previous district, we had, I was a part of the 3-member board, which I'm still a part of. We started a nonprofit organization to support the school system. So we are in discussions now to talk about how do we create a nonprofit organization to support the Bangor school system to help to offset some of these local costs. And, up there, it's really about, it was focused on, it is focused on offering learning opportunities beyond the public school because the area is very different and there aren't a lot of community resources here. But this, whatever is decided for this foundation that we are going to start here, it would have a specific mission and vision. And the benefit of that is a nonprofit, a 501c3, right? We say that wrong. That type of an organization allows for people to write grants or get funding that extends beyond the public school. So the public school can only do so many, but that allows for more. The foundation up there, over the weekend that we've got word that the grant that was submitted just got funded for $60,000 a year for the next 2 years. And that's a small little operation going on up there. So there's a lot of possibilities. The district that my kids went to in Pennsylvania also had a nonprofit organization that was solely focused on the music and the performing arts program. So back, in the early 2000s, when everything was getting cut, music and art, they didn't have to do any of that because the fund had grown so much, it was able to support that. So that is, to me, the long-term vision. I would say this is, something all public schools should consider. Because we have to start thinking innovatively about funding when we see increased needs. And, with special needs, the public school is required to educate every child. Private schools, you're in or you're not. So it's a very different model. The public school is designed to ensure that all students that walk through the doors get a high quality education. And that doesn't matter, that shouldn't matter where they come from, who their family is, what their socioeconomic status is. We're obligated to provide them with all of the supports that they need so that they can access education and reach their highest potential. So, it's a different model than private schools. And there's a lot of draw to private schools. You can pay for a lot of things, but not everyone can. So how do we keep our public schools high quality so that those that have no other option choose Bangor? Counselor Beck?
I would just say that, in the presentation, there was a link to the breakout, which actually pointed to the old March, the first reading. And in reading that, you could see that even before you brought this to us, you guys found $840,000 to cut. And then in hearing tonight the presentation with the increased revenue, the non-tax revenue, what we're really talking about is less than an $800,000 increase to the taxpayer. being that education is just baked into our city's DNA. I mean, you look at our annual reports going all the way back, and you read the school department part, it's our jewel, it's what we do. A city is only as good as the opportunity it gives to the children to become the people they're meant to be. I mean, that's 1939, it's right in there. So if you're here to tell us that this is the budget, this is what we need, we've crunched every number, we've kicked every stone, this is what it is, then that's what it is, in my opinion, and we'll have to figure something else out, because this is a priority to me personally. And to people I talk to in the city of Bangor, I mean, knocking doors during the election is, yes, I heard a lot of complaints about property tax, a lot of complaints, but it was never married with, oh, but go look in education to cut. Education is important to everybody, and everyone understands the investment. So, I guess my question is this is what it is?
I would 100% tell you, yes, this is what it is. Director Heyman and I spent countless hours digging through, revising, having ongoing meetings with building administrators. Can you look at this? What about this? How about this? Some cases, yes, that's where we were able to trim back. That's where we didn't accept all of the proposals that came through. We really looked very closely. That's where, some people were concerned, you're gonna take away these positions that haven't been filled. Well, they haven't been filled. So yes, we're gonna take them away. And I think, that's the mindset that, I think we both align. Director Heyman and I align with that. And he was happy that we were ready to take those out of the budget. So, I mean, that's what you can expect moving forward, because I'm not about the frivolous extra. I'm about mostly do more with less in a lot of ways, but certainly do what we need to do and make sure that those that are in our organization are, getting the top quality, not only in terms of students, but in terms of staff and their work environment. We need to make sure, we're on 3 of 4 contract negotiations. There's a lot of challenges, and you mentioned the people who are behind on their mortgages and their taxes. Well, some of those could potentially be our employees. So, I mean, it's a interwoven web that is completely connected, and it's not easy, and but I do love the idea of the nonprofit, and I was happy to hear that this school committee is 100% in support of it.
What's your fish?
That's a great idea. It's a very exciting idea. And I think that how much do you think, if you weren't so mindful of knowing you couldn't come with the budget you probably would have liked to have come in with, how much do you think you shaved off that you would have really liked to have come to us with? And then again, if times were different, money wasn't an issue, how much money do you think your budget would be to be able to do everything you would like to do? So it's like 2 questions.
That's a loaded question.
I just want to kind of get a comparison. Well,
I mean, some of those experiential trips and things of that sort, I mean,
within reason.
I don't know, do you know offhand how much I just put that out of my head, because I was like, no, it's not where we are, so this is where we are.
I'm just curious.
This is the first time we've like-minded, you don't need the position, cut it, it's like, so we're, let's go. So that's good to hear, and it's good to see the transfers within different schools to fill the needs, instead of just leaving it where it is and adding. I feel that's a great step in the right direction, where a budget this big always faces challenges. Is it's going to have contractual increases in wages, and our lovely friend health insurance never seems to stop, and they actually put the fear of God into all the school districts by coming out with 17.89% at first, and then they trimmed it down to 14. And then at the end, they said, oh, by the way, yours is 7.1. So at the end, we were very happy, but we had anxiety all through the process with our health insurance, because from prescriptions to visits, they continue to go up. and the prices continue to go up. So we were up against some challenges in special ed. In the other expense categories, we have tuition paid to other. And those are children with extremely high needs that cannot be taken care of in the Bangor School Department. We have to house in other places, which are, the daily rate is quite expensive. And that's why that's going up this year. So some costs happening that we can't control. So that we do the best we can, and we're finally cutting some positions. So the overall increase is not what it would be.
But do you know how much you shaved off going back or an idea?
I didn't add it up. We have the two positions at the high school, the two transfers. We have 8 ed techs that we didn't fill.
But it was 800.
$840,000, $884.
That was just in March. So
That was just in
before
March.
that.
Oh, before that, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of that may have been the health insurance
That was the health
going from
Yeah.
an extreme high.
Yeah.
And because they said, this is what Anthony's break even, and there's no reserve from prior years. Sorry about that. We'll get back to you. And
Did that happen with the city too, right there? Did that happen here?
No, so we're a little bit, so we always roll the dice. Our health insurance runs on a calendar year basis.
Oh,
So we're projecting, and the schools are part of, I believe you're part of NEA.
MEA.
Yeah.
NEA, and so they go on a fiscal year basis. And what happens is insurance companies typically won't give you a rate until about 60 days before the renewal. So to Jerry's point, they kind of scare the devil out of you
Yes.
for,
whole
and
budget.
then somehow we're thankful that it's only 7 point, you know.
Yeah.
You
Oh.
know what I mean? I think it feels a little big to switch, I'm not gonna lie.
It's very true.
Are there other questions from the council?
I just have,
Yes, Councilor Haas.
do you know where this budget falls in relationship to some of the other school districts around the state yet? Where you're falling in, right, of equal size, you know, comparative?
I'd have to look into that, do you know?
Are you looking for the percent increase? Is that what you're looking
Yeah,
for?
just the
We can look into that, and if they're publishing it, we can get it, we can actually tell you the portion that would increase the local share if they produce, if they publish that as well. So we can look at most of the schools
Yeah,
are down
I don't wanna
south.
see their whole. Just
No, just
the
the,
percentage, yes, an increase. That would be helpful.
yes. We can get that, if it's published, absolutely. And papers love that stuff, so I'm sure if it's public, it's published.
The main school board might have it, the school board association, they may have some of those figures if you can't find it in local publications, but.
Because everybody's going through the approval process right now at the same time,
Mhm.
so.
Thank you.
The only other thing I would add to your question about what do you cut is we also have a city budget that has no frills in it. And yet the percent increase is too high for our taxpayers. So do we cut public health? Do we stop plowing streets? What do we do? Because it's on us as a council to bring that number down to something that is reasonable for everybody. And as somebody who does not have kids in the school, when I open my tax bill and I see how much of my property tax is going to schooling, I want to know that every single dime is being used in the most effective and efficient way possible. And I understand what you're saying about looking at the top line, but the top line that I still see even after tonight is declining enrollment and more than a 5% increase in school staff in the last 5 years. So I really need to work to reconcile that in my mind to be able to say, this is a budget that I can get behind. I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, I just want to add, and this has been brought up a few times, the piece around enrollment, and Councilor Fournier acknowledged this earlier. Yes, enrollment has declined, but our special education population has increased. And it's crude to say, but a special education student costs a lot more to educate than a regular education student. And that's just a fact.
But when I look at this year's budget, I don't see increases in special education teachers. And so that to me is where I'm trying to understand what is the real impact here. Every student, regardless of disability, should have a high quality education. You and I agree 1,000% on that. But I don't see that in an athletic director position. So again, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how this all works.
I obviously agree with you entirely. And I think that that's why these numbers at the Bangor Regional Program, Kids Peace in Stillwater, that's so much of our education budget will go to those specialized schools that unfortunately our department isn't equipped to give the education that they deserve and require. So the tuition to send them in that way. So you're not going to see special education budgets within the actual like Vine Street or Down East, or you're going to see them at Stillwater, Kids Peace and Bangor Regional, and those costs continue to go up. And so, and the number of students we're sending there is so much higher than it ever has been.
Councilor Mallon?
What's the do we have a federal reimbursement for special education? What is it? What percentage?
The special education is all factored into the ED 279. So I would have to take that out and.
Has it increased or has it remained the same? It used to be fairly high reimbursement.
Without looking at it, I did an analysis of the first page of the ED 279, but I think the special education is not on the first page. It's on the second and third page of the document, if I recall right. So I was focused more on teacher ratios, enrollment, those type of numbers. So I took a look at the decline in ratios and et cetera, and we looked at the teacher counts. And we had that presentation not too long ago. And I'll try to find what you're looking at on again, number of employees, the increase over time, and try to isolate it to the cause, because it could be special education, because when you add a self-contained room, it's one teacher and 2 ed techs. It could be the ML students that Kate referred to earlier.
Can I ask, do you think it's possible that they, and I don't know if those numbers, if there was 31 over the past 5 years and then those positions stayed, or if that also includes the full-time subs that we had from our COVID dollars in every school that we cut last year. So I'm wondering if there is a shift in that too, and that increase to member threats point that we saw, but now we don't have. I can't speak to that, but that's a good question. Yeah.
And the other costs around COVID, somebody said it earlier, the amount of social workers in our schools, we purposely increased those. And I believe are at 6 or 7 district wide now. So.
Our comments from the school committee? Chair Luciano?
I would just like to add, as someone who really enjoys the budget, I think the only one maybe who does, I was very impressed with the way that Dr. Robinson handled the budget this year. It was a different approach. It was a very ground up approach. It was refreshing. And I really am grateful for the work. I know it was a lot. I have sat in a lot of meetings with you right after those meetings, and it seems like a lot. So I'm very aware of the scalpel that is used as opposed to the hacksaw, and thank you for your work, but it really was a different approach to how we look at our budget overall and try to think about where we can maximize our dollars. So that was, I just wanted to add that note too. I'm not sure if that was discussed prior to me arriving, but I just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you. We're also joined by City Finance Director Dave Little.
Thank you. I just wanted to interject with the question regarding other school districts and their increase. It is doing a quick search, information regarding Portland's budget is out there. Budget school district increase to their tax rate was 5.33%. So it's about double what Bangor's proposal is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good use of your phone. I like it.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I know the school committee has to run to another meeting. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Thank you
you
for the
very much.
walkthrough.
Thanks.
Thank you for answering all the questions.
Thank you.
We're
Thanks
adjourned.
for
Have a good night.
those good questions. I appreciate it.
Next time you do is gonna be a lot.
Yes.